On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Curtis Franklin back on the show with me today. Now, as use cases continue to expand for AI, cybersecurity continues to be one of the big focuses. The question is, will AI have the chops to keep up with hackers? We'll definitely talk about it. Plus, today we have Veridas as our guest. They're going to talk biometrics and how it's transforming security. As we know, we have Alfonso Santos and Leo Longhurst from Veridas. We're going to talk about security theme of the month. That's right, digital identities and how you can utilize them. You definitely shouldn't miss it. TWiT on the set.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 552, recorded July 14th, 2022. Keyless is the key. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Canary. Because thousands of ignored alerts help nobody, get one alert that matters. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit. Enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And by ACI Learning. Companies agree that attracting and retaining talent is critical. With an average completion rate of over 80%, your IT team deserves the entertaining and cutting-edge training that they want. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit for a free 2-week training trial for your team. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Maresca, your guide through the big world of the enterprise. You know what? I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in an expert and a professional. He's our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin, principal analyst at Omdia, and the man who knows just about everything that's going on in the enterprise. Curtis, welcome back from the high seas. What was waiting for you this week in the enterprise?
Oh, I had a mountain of email waiting for me, lots of messages, and I have been digging hard because, oddly enough, I'm back out again on Monday, heading out to a vendor conference where I'll be in Las Vegas next week. And the thing that I'm really looking forward to, the thing that always makes me excited, is knowing that the day I arrive in Las Vegas, the high is supposed to be 117 degrees. And, nothing makes me look forward to travel like realizing that my face could just melt right off like the villain in a Indiana Jones movie. So I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, trying to get some things written, trying to get a bunch of interviews done, and setting up my schedule for Black Cat and DEF CON, because, those are right around the corner.
Right, they are. So speaking of that movie, did you see the new one, the new Indiana Jones?
I have not seen it yet. I've heard a lot of people who have seen it, and they say it's fabulous. So that may be on the docket for this weekend, because I understand that most movie theaters these days come with air conditioning. So we may go take advantage of that one day this weekend.
That they do. Well, it's great seeing you. We'll definitely have to talk a little bit more about the movie after the show, because it's actually pretty good. But I have some qualms with it. Well, we should definitely get started, because lots to talk about. Now, as use cases continue to expand for using AI, cybersecurity continues to be one of those big focus areas. The question we all have in our minds is, will AI actually keep up with the hackers and the ever-growing threat surface? Well, we'll definitely talk about that. Plus, today we have Veridas on as our guest, and we're going to talk about biometrics and how it's transforming security as we know it. Now, with Alfonso Santos, Director of Business Development, and Leo Longhurst, he's Director of Partnerships on This Week. We're going to continue the theme of this week of security, and this month, of course, and talk digital identity. So lots to talk about. So definitely stick around. Also remember, go right now to twit.tv/TWiT, hit that subscribe button, because you know what? We need you to subscribe and support the show, because that's how we continue to do it. Of course, we also have Club TWiT at twit.tv/clubtwit at $7 a month. It includes ad-free podcasts of all our podcasts. And of course, it also has a bunch of special events in that Discord server that has amazing people on it that's exclusive to just you. So definitely check that out at twit.tv/clubtwit. But first, like we always do, let's go ahead and jump into this week's news blips. If you're familiar with FAS or serverless technology, you know that there can be some drawbacks as well. That's where Amazon Web Services has made some updates to its Lambda function lifecycle documentation, revealing that it can now proactively initialize functions even without invocation. Now, as you know, one of the largest selling points to serverless technology is the fact that you can activate, invocate, and compute only when you actually need them. Well, this development actually reduces the impact and the frequency of cold starts, or cold boots, I guess you can call them, leading to really smoother experiences for your users. Now, AWS is essentially warming functions on demand. The company further explained that pre-initialized execution environments can replace environments about to shut down or can be used if available during the initialization of new environments. So the proactive initialization was actually first discovered during a distributed trace, showing a significant time gap between function initialization and the execution or invocation of it, hinting at the existence of proactively initialized Lambda sandboxes that can actually help with that. And the Lambda function sandboxes are initialized without pending invocations, meaning fewer cold starts. And the AWS Lambda team actually confirmed that they use proactive initialization during deployments and eager assignments. Now, this optimization actually aligns with AWS's intent to run as many functions on the same server as possible, and the developer's desire to make a cold start less frequent and faster. However, that might not be the only challenges you actually face when it comes to serverless technology like Lambdas. And when running Lambda at scale, one of the biggest challenges is actually managing the increasing number of functions and monitoring their performance. Of course, this can actually lead to higher resource utilization, and of course, could also lead to a lot higher costs as well. In fact, monitoring and debugging service applications can be more complicated and time consuming than even traditional architectures, as it requires tracing the function's invocation from that event that started it to the final output. And as a result, developers need to really have proper monitoring, logging, tracing, and debugging tools in place. Now, another challenge is fine-tuning the Lambda environment to optimize performance. So this could include adjusting your memory and timeout settings, container reusing, in fact, even some other performance tweaks. So while AWS proactive initialization helps address some of the scaling challenges facing Lambda functions, developers still need to carefully manage and optimize each function's performance to ensure seamless scaling.
Well, you knew this had to be coming. According to a report from /Next, cybercriminals are leveraging generative AI technology to aid their activities and launch business email compromise, or BEC, attacks. Their tool of choice? WormGPT, a black hat alternative to GPT models like ChatGPT, specifically designed for malicious activities. As with other large language model AI engines, WormGPT was trained on various data sources with a focus on malware-related data. Now, WormGPT generates human-like text based on the input it receives and is able to create highly convincing fake emails. According to an article on Dark Reading, the research team also conducted an evaluation of the potential risks associated with WormGPT with a specific focus on these BEC attacks. To do so, they instructed the tool to generate an email aimed at pressuring an unsuspecting account manager into making payment for a fraudulent invoice. The results revealed WormGPT could not only execute a persuasive tone, but was also strategically cunning, an indicator of its capabilities for mounting sophisticated phishing and BEC attacks. Now, one of the advantages WormGPT seems to have over human collaborators is an absolute lack of ethics, human emotions, or limitations. Another advantage it brings is the ability to help even novice or unskilled criminals generate highly convincing messages. Now, going beyond the collaborative uses of AI, cybercriminals are designing jailbreaks. These are specialized prompts designed to manipulate generative AI interfaces into creating output that could disclose sensitive information, produce inappropriate content, or even execute harmful code. Some ambitious cybercriminals are even taking steps another move beyond by crafting custom modules like those used by ChatGPT, but designed to help them carry out an attack. Now, this is an evolution that's going to make the job of the cyber defenders even more complicated. Researchers say the threat of AI-aided BEC, malware, and phishing attacks can best be fought with AI-aided defense capabilities. From this perspective, organizations will ultimately become reliant on AI to do the discovery, detection, and ultimately the remediation of these AI-based threats, because there's simply no way to humanly get ahead of the curve without the assistance of an AI.
Back on TWiT episode 868, Alan Malvitano, Leo, and I actually talked about Microsoft DirectorStorage and how we can actually get started in the real world scenarios, use cases for the tech to actually improve hardware and hard drive performance. Now, the exciting news for the gaming community from this Verge article, Microsoft actually rolled out version 1.2 of its DirectorStorage SDK, enhancing support for legacy. That's right, the old spinning disks hard drives. Initially designed to actually streamline data from high-speed NVMe solid-state drives straight to your GPU without CPU interference, DirectorStorage now caters to the needs of older hard drives as well. That's right. Now, in the past, developers had to actually juggle between different methods for SSDs and HDDs, but not anymore. DirectorStorage 1.2 unifies the code for both SSDs and HDDs. And while this SSD employ an unbuffered mode for rapid data transfer to the GPU, a new buffered mode now caters to the traditional hard drives. As Microsoft DirectX team actually explains, legacy hard drives require buffered I/O to offset those long, drawn-out seek times. By enabling this mode, games installed strictly on slower hard drives can actually capitalize on OS file buffering features for speed boosts. But it doesn't stop there. That's right. Microsoft has also fine-tuned its GPU decompression of textures, making it even faster in DirectorStorage 1.2. Now, this feature introduced in version 1.1 delegates asset decompression into the graphics card rather than the CPU, with big-name tech companies like NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel ready to back DirectorStorage's latest GPU decompression techniques. Now, I, for one, am eager to see companies like Autodesk, Adobe, and other graphics accelerated applications, as well as more gaming developers, to actually hop on board here, particularly now that the technology benefits the older hard drives as well.
The Biden administration has just released a 57-page National Cybersecurity Strategic Implementation Plan, or NCSIP, which describes more than 65 initiatives that various federal agencies will implement over the next several years. These include strengthening U.S. critical infrastructure against cyber threats, establishing enforceable liability for software products and services, and devising more effective ways to disrupt and disable threat actor operations and their infrastructure. While many security professionals see the NCSIP as important for the administration's cybersecurity strategy to move forward and believe its aggressive deadlines send the right message of urgency to stakeholders, some wonder about how it can succeed without adequate funding and bipartisan support in Congress. As an example, while the implementation plan calls on federal agencies to eliminate legacy systems, funding for the Technology Modernization Fund, which was approved in 2017, hasn't yet seen a line in a budget. The document's executive summary described this week's version of the document as the first iteration of the implementation plan and calls it a living document that will be updated on an annual basis. Now, just in case you've forgotten, the objectives of the cyber strategy are grouped under 5 separate pillars: defend critical infrastructure, disrupt and dismantle threat actors, shape market forces to drive security and resilience, invest in a resilient future, and forge international partnerships. This week's document provides high-level plans and initiatives for meeting those objectives. Now, the document certainly isn't perfect. One problem with the plan is that it lacks any path to coordinated, standardized enforcement and leaves individual sector-specific agencies in control. Putting together a framework or set of agency guidelines in the current political climate and with only 16 months before a national election seems unlikely at best. With that said, the NCSIP does seem to move the ball forward on national cybersecurity. One significant factor is that the implementation plan has a role for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, to provide cybersecurity training and incident response for the healthcare sector, which is a major target of ransomware attacks. Issues like forming a private sector core of cybersecurity professionals to act as rapid responders in the event of a major critical infrastructure attack, well, those will have to wait for agencies and others to figure out little details like credentialing and indemnification against lawsuits.
Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, we have the amazing Bytes. But before we get to those Bytes, we do have to thank an amazing sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Things Canary. Now, if you want super early warnings of intrusions and data breaches, you need Things Canary. Deploy your birds and forget about them. They remain silent until you need it, and get one alert. That's right, one alert, whether it's email, text, Slack, webhook, or even syslog, only when it matters. Things hardware, VM, and cloud-based canaries are deployed on all 7 continents. Canaries can be set up in minutes. Pretty easy to set up with no ongoing overhead and nearly 0 false positives. You can detect attackers long before they actually dig in. Now, the Canary triggers are simple. If someone is accessing your lore files or brute forcing your fake internal SSH servers, you have a problem. That's right. Canary uses deceptively simple, uncomplicated, high quality markers of trouble on your network. And here's how it works. Listen, simply choose a profile for your Canary device, whether it's a Windows box or a brand name router or even a Linux server. And if you want, you can further tweak the services that actually runs on your Canary. You can make it either a specified version of IIS server or OpenSSH or Windows File Share with actually files constructed according to your naming schema. Now, lastly, you could register Canary with the hosted console for monitoring and notification. And you lie in wait. Attackers who have basically breached your network, malicious insiders even, and other adversaries make themselves known by accessing your Canary. Now, there's little room for doubt. If someone browsed a file and opened a sensitive looking document on your Canary, you'll immediately be alerted to the problem. It's pretty rare to find a security product that people can tolerate, and it's nearly impossible to find one that customers actually love. If you go to canary.tools/love, that's canary.tools/love, you'll find a selection of unsolicited tweets and emails full of that customer love for Things Canary. Visit canary.tools/twit, and for just $7,500 per year, you'll get 5 canaries, your own hosted console upgrade support, and maintenance. And if you use code TWIT in the How to Hear About Us box, you'll get 10% off the price for life. Things Canary adds incomparable value, but if you're unhappy, you can always return your canaries with their 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. However, during all the years TWiT has partnered with Things Canary, the refund guarantee has never been claimed. Visit canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And we thank Things Canary for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for the news bites, and this one's very compelling. In fact, it's a great segue from one of Kurt's blips. In the world of cybersecurity, reported by Dark Reading, a compelling report has just unveiled by Bugcrowd, a premier crowdsourced cybersecurity platform. Now, it's called Inside the Mind of a Hacker report for 2023, provides insightful revelations starting with the fact that 72% of hackers believe that AI, as powerful as it may be, won't replace human creativity in managing vulnerabilities and conducting security research. This is very interesting because obviously generative AI is making its presence felt, with actually 55% of the respondents saying that it can actually already outperform hackers, or it will do so within the next 5 years. But despite this, hackers remain confident, of course, with the majority of believing that AI can actually replicate their creative approach. Now, generative AI's top uses among hackers actually include these. You can do task automation. You can do data analysis, vulnerability identification. You can finding validations, and reconnaissance, as well as they use this. The usage actually aligns with directives from the U.S. Department of Defense and President Biden's cybersecurity executive order, emphasizing the importance of AI in cybersecurity. Demographics confirm some stereotypes here, which is actually interesting from the report. Most hackers are Gen Z and they're male, with 57%, age 18 to 24, and 96% male. Now, hacking is mostly not a full-time occupation, with only 29% considering it to be their main job. No surprise there. And they're motivated by personal development, whether it's financial gain, excitement, and challenge, but also altruism, is, as 87% think reporting vulnerabilities is more crucial than profiting from them. Now, the state of hacking and vulnerability management is mixed bag, because with perceptions of companies' of awareness of their breach risk varies. In fact, increasingly, 84% of hackers report an increasing in vulnerabilities since COVID-19. Yet the other 78% say that companies' attack surfaces are becoming harder to compromise. So actually moving the other direction. Now, hacking also serves as a career development tool, with 42% of respondents forming long-term relationships with security decision makers. Over half said hacking helped them secure a remote job. Dave Jerry, CEO of Bugcrowd, actually commented that the report showcases the diverse skills and expertise of hackers as global AI adoption reaches critical mass. Bugcrowd's survey actually included respondents and responses from 1,000 participants in 89 countries. Now, for a deeper dive, get into the mind of hackers there, you can download the full report. You can discover how ethical hackers are an invaluable asset to any organization, and they provide a significant return on investment in aiding digital transform, for sure. I want to bring Curtis in here because, of course, Curtis lives and breathes enterprise and security. Given some of the revelations in this report, Curtis, what do you think it means for an organization? How should they adjust their cybersecurity strategy based on this?
That is the question that a lot of people are asking right now. And I will tell you that I'm working on a report on that precise issue at the moment. So this is good because it's something I've been working on. The answer is that for virtually every company we talk to, in virtually every field, generative AI is being seen as an employee amplification technology rather than an employee replacement technology. And I think that's really what this gets to when we're talking about the minds of a hacker. If you listen to what they said, they're talking about using generative AI to do one of a handful of things: either take care of rote tasks, help them do research on a deeper data set than they could easily do the research themselves, or look for connections and correlations that might not be obvious to a human. All of those amplify the efforts of the individual worker. They don't, as they say, it doesn't replace human creativity. It's not designed to. And the creative function is one where the AI really can't. That there has been a lot of talk about AI replacing writers, replacing journalists, even in your world, replacing coders. And I think what we see in all of these things where people have tried it is that the AI might be able to replace a human if you define replace with a really low bar, because they tend to do writing that is really bad. They tend to do artwork that is pretty bad. I'm guessing, although I haven't really used it for this, that if you look at the code, if you ask one of them to generate code, it's code that might work, but it's not going to be elegant. It's not going to be optimized. It's going to be pretty ugly code. And I hate to do this to you, but I make the analogy of being like 10 years ago when you could ask Microsoft Word to output a web page. It would give you HTML, but it was pretty bad HTML. No rational person would use that on their site. And I think that's where we are with AI. So what does this mean for the defenders? I think it means that defenders should be looking at using generative AI in the same way that the hackers are using generative AI. Now, there are AI types, there are AI products that in fact do replacement, that actually carry out actions. But if you look at them, these tend to be machine learning or AI models that are very, very, very tightly focused. And they do one thing, they just do it very rapidly. That's fine. We've been using that kind of automation for a long time. The broader based AI that ChatGPT and its ilk represent, they're going to be helpers rather than replacers for a very long time to come.
I like what you said there. I like obviously AI can replace a lot of the mundane tasks or the tasks that require you to identify things you couldn't identify as a human. I think it could be almost on the flip side too, if you think about it. There's a lot of tools today that will sift through code. I've seen them in GitHub repositories and GitLab repositories where they'll go and sift through code and they'll find credentials that are stored in config files or YAML files or ARM templates or whatever. And and they will tell you and alert you, and you have to go fix it. But there's also tools on the flip side for hackers to go, okay, there's some credentials inside this config file. Let me go and actually, a normal human wouldn't be able to sift through all of that data all at once and be able to identify the fact that that is actually a credential when it goes to a blob storage, right? And so I think they're, to keep up with this trend, the technology has to know that whatever it's doing for as a defense mechanism, it can also be used as an offensive mechanism as well. How does that change the landscape, you think, Curtis, for organizations? Are they going to just think that if they buy this solution, it's going to change everything for me and I'm going to be ahead of the game? Or do they not realize that there's also people using it on the flip side?
Well, the thing that I give companies credit for at the moment is that most of them are thinking about the repercussions of pulling generative AI into their system. People are thinking about issues like data privacy. In other words, if this is scooping up large volumes of data, what's it doing to personally identifiable information, or PII, which is what most of the privacy legislation around the world deals with? Does it violate any of that? How about company secrets? Are you going to feed it company information so that it can search it, but feed it confidential information? And if you do, will it then give that confidential information to anyone who asks? These are very real questions, and these are very valid concerns, and companies are being a little bit slow to implement their own ChatGPT or other generative AI or large language model AI until they get this figured out. Now, a lot of people are urging their companies to hurry into this, saying, well, if we don't adopt it right now, we're going to be behind. I think that caution is called for, because this is one of those things where getting it wrong, if you look at risk, where you look at both the possibility of an incident occurring and its impact to the organization, you end up with a risk that's pretty high when you're going into a new technology that eats data by the giant bucketful. Another thing that's worth pointing out, while I did one of the blips was on using WormGPT, a ChatGPT thing, we need to keep in mind that these large language model AI systems are not just data hungry. They are also compute resource hungry and power hungry, electric power hungry. And that makes them really expensive. So if an APT group, Advanced Persistent Threat Group, is making use of truly sophisticated generative AI, it means they've got some truly massive dollars behind them. We know that some of these APT groups do. But it also means that if a company decides we have to fight fire with fire, we have to have our own large, capable generative AI engine to fuel our defense, they better be prepared to write some big checks for that, because it's not going to be cheap. And just to give people an idea of the scale, we're already hearing companies like the chip manufacturers say that generative AI engines are going to replace crypto mining farms as customers for their GPUs, because the same hardware tools can be used, the same power is required. And we know about all the stories about the massive power that these crypto mining farms have taken up. That's what we're looking at for a lot of the generative AI in the coming years.
You brought up a good point. I mean, so speaking of dollars, the report mentions that hackers are motivated mostly by the greater good. Reporting vulnerabilities is seen more as an important thing rather than profiting from it. How do you think that maybe organizations can capitalize on this altruism to really improve things? What do you think the best thing for them to do there is if they don't want to put out the big dollars for the AI?
Well, it's going to be a little bit self-serving for a company like Bugcrowd, but I will say that their model works really well. Bugcrowd tends to do things like, in the same way that a lot of insurance companies manage self-insurance for large corporations, Bugcrowd is a company that will manage the bug bounty program for corporations. The bug bounty programs work. Basically, yes, you're depending on the altruism. And let's say now you're also depending upon the social prestige within the hacker community that comes from being the known person or entity that found a particular vulnerability. That is social currency. And they trade on that. But, a few thousands or a few tens of thousands of dollars thrown in as a kicker doesn't hurt at all. And I think a lot of these companies have recognized that it is a lot cheaper to pay bounties than it is to fight off lawsuits from putting out software that had some major flaws in it.
Very true. Very true. Well, folks, I think that does it for the Bytes because we have a really great guest coming up. So we definitely want to get to it. Next up, we're going to talk with Veridas about digital identity and biometrics. So we definitely should get to that. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's ACI Learning. Thanks to ACI Learning, the days of boring, archaic training methods are finally over. Thank goodness, lack of meaningful impact shows up as low engagement, which translates to really suboptimal performance if you think about it. If you and your team deserve to be entertained while you train and be empowered to keep your organization safe and secure. It's really simple. If your IT training isn't raising your team to the level you aspire to be, you need ACI Learning. Now, while the training industry really completion rate is barely 30%, ACI Learning blows its competitors out of the water with an over 80% completion rate. This is the format that IT professionals want. Now, in today's IT talent shortage, whether you operate as your own department or part of a larger team, your skills must be at a bare minimum up to date, right? 94% of CISOs and CIOs agree that attracting and retaining talent is increasingly critical in their roles. ACI Learning helps you retain your team and entrust them to thrive while investing in the security of your business. Keeps your skills up to date with over 7,000 hours of content available and new episodes added daily. Your enterprise needs cohesive, cutting-edge training to keep your team compliant and ahead of the pack. Choose an existing course. Let ACI Learning combine modules for even a tailored solution, or let them custom design a course to address your specific needs. ACI Learning's private bootcamp will train your team alongside the most passionate and best subject matter experts certified in the latest version of each certification. Full access to advanced reporting via ACI Learning's Pro Portal help you track and manage your team's results, manage seats. You can unassign or assign team members for customized courses relevant to their position. You can access monthly progress usage reports. In fact, visual reports provide immediate insight into your team's viewing patterns and progress over any period. ACI Learning trains thousands of aspiring tech and cyber professionals annually, including providing scholarships to individuals from diverse backgrounds and those transitioning out of the military service into civilian careers. Join the always-on tech training solution in a rapidly changing world of technology. ACI Learning is in the studio every day to record and share relevant content that impacts your business. Be bold, train smart. Learn more about ACI Learning's premium training options across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness at go.acilearning.com/twit. For teams of 2 to 1,000, volume discounts start at 5 seats. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit for more information on a free 2-week training trial for your team. And we thank ACI Learning for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiT ride. Today we have two guests. That's right, two guests from the same company, from Veridas. We have Alfonso Santos. He's the Director of Business Development. And of course, Larry Longhurst, Director of Partnerships. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, before we get going, and we've never done this before for two people, so we'll try to do this. We'll try to make it brief for the audience, but our audience loves... There are a huge spectrum of experience, whether they're starting out entry or they're CISOs or CTOs. And so some of them love to hear people's origin stories. So can you maybe take us through a journey through tech and what brought you to Veridas? Maybe we'll start with Alfonso first.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. As you can see by my accent, I'm not from the US. Actually, I'm European. I'm from Spain. So my background is in the engineering world. So we share something here. I'm a mechanical engineer. And I began working in the startup world as well in Europe in a completely different field. So I began working for a small company building storage, meaning that we repurpose batteries coming from EVs, so from electric vehicles, to build big storage containers and then install them in renewable plants, to store all this energy coming from the sun or the wind. And then, I was more a product engineer. Then I moved to more sales part, and then I shift to another completely sector, a completely different sector, which is security. And then I knew Veridas, and I thought, what we are doing, and we will talk more later, is changing the world and changing how we interact in the digital space. So that's why I began working for Veridas in this case.
Fantastic. How about you, Larry? What brought you to Veridas? Veridas, and where'd you get started?
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. My background, I've been in the FI space for about 20 years. So I worked for a number of the different players in the FI technology space, Diebold, US Bank, Elan, which is a division of US Bank, and then Fiserv. And so I've been around for a while in this space. And I before coming to Veridas, I really made a conscious decision that I really wanted to focus on the software, digital aspect of the space. And when I had discussions with Veridas, I was really impressed with kind of their focus on changing the dialogue around identity and how to approach that. And so I'm excited to be here. It's great space in the industry, and certainly growing. There's a lot of opportunity here.
Right. Well, we should definitely get started, because obviously this is an important conversation. We haven't really necessarily talked about the kind of the biometrics industry before. We have talked about digital identity, but just kind of going into it, the concept of maybe I asked one of you or both of you, why move to the world of biometric security? What's the benefit of it? What are the traditional people who are using, let's say, traditional username and password, or even the standard SMS based MFA or 2FA? What moving to biometrics, what do they get?
Yeah, no, and if you don't mind, I'll take this one, Lou. I think I'd just like to give a little background, because that's a bit of a loaded question, right? There's a lot of baggage, I guess, that goes along with talking about biometrics, and so I'd like to just kind of level set a little bit relative to biometrics. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, right, in our society, especially here in the U.S. We're concerned about our identity being out there in the world, right? Our fingerprint, our iris, our face, our voice. What happens if that system gets hacked, right? We hear all the time, systems are getting hacked, right? And passwords are compromised. What happens when my biometrics get compromised? That's a concern, right? It's a valid concern. In essence, what this question is asking is, why should I not be concerned as a consumer? How can I feel safe about, my biometrics being out there? And so I think the answer is you should be concerned, frankly, but having a better understanding of how biometric systems work, and the fact that some systems are very robust and others less so, can help, right? First, there's been out there in the news a lot about systems that have been compromised, in the recent, this year, right? A lot of publicity around that. And so that validates consumers' concerns. So from an industry perspective, it's really incumbent on us to educate, to help consumers understand how systems should be designed. And as you mentioned, right, when you go out to a website today, you go out, you put in your username, you put in a password, maybe there's multi-factor authentication, there's a one-time passcode, right? Those all work on something that's called presumed identity. It's presumed because, it's something this person knows, but somebody who's hacked your account can also know your password. It's presumed because a one-time passcode. It's presumed that you're the one that has your phone in your hands, but it's not certain. So with biometrics, there's much more certainty that the person on the other end is in fact you, right? It is a known entity. Right now, obviously, then that brings into question, well, what about compromises, right? What about the security aspect of how do I know for sure that it's not a recorded voice, for example? Well, that's where fraud controls come into place, right? So you've got biometric systems have to have a deep fraud controls relative to protecting against deep fakes, to protecting against what are called replay attacks, using a picture or a mask of a face to try to compromise the system. So that's definitely a critical part of biometric systems that need to be in place and give confidence to consumers that it makes sense to trust them. The other piece that comes into play is, there's a concern that if the biometric system is hacked, I mentioned earlier, your face or your voice is out there and it can be then used to compromise, your other accounts potentially. What's important to understand is that in a robust biometric solution, that data that's your voice or your face is not stored as your voice or your face. It's stored as a mathematical vector, right? And it's an irreversible mathematical vector, and it's non-interoperable. In other words, once I get that vector, I can't turn it back into your face. It doesn't work. And I can't go take that vector and use it to compromise another biometric system. So it only works on the system that it was created on. Right. Go ahead.
No, you keep going. I want to have another question about AI, but keep going for sure.
Okay. So in the end, if that system is compromised, if your mathematical vector does get stolen, it's useless to somebody. There is not a value that they can go and use to get it, because even if they find a customer, a company that's using the Veridas system, for example, and they put your mathematical vector up there, that system is also going to ask to see your current face, right? And it's going to look at the face and know that person who's trying to compromise the account isn't me. And so you're safe. So understanding that helps to kind of put to rest a little bit some of those concerns. And so going back to your question, the original question of, okay, why should we do biometrics? In the US, we feel very strongly about rights, right? We feel strongly about the right to vote, the right to move about freely, the right to own property. We believe that it is a right to be identified using your biometrics, using your face, using who you are. That same should apply. It applies in the physical world, right? When we go to the airport, we're identified by our physical self, right? With an ID, a driver's license that has our picture on it, and us as the individual standing there. Well, in the same way, we think that's what should apply in the logical world. That using your physical identity is the best way to secure that space, and not only secure, but also it makes for a better user experience. It makes it more efficient, so it's lower cost. So there's a lot of reasons why biometrics makes a lot of sense. But really, those three things are what we would emphasize: is that reduce fraud, better user experience, and more efficient, kind of lower cost experience.
Now, Alfonso, one to you, because Larry called this out a little bit. He kind of, I guess, he started the conversation here around. He talked a little bit about AI and deepfakes, and how does this apply? Like these seem like AI threats that could potentially reproduce potential biometric data from people. Are customers worried about that? Are they worried about the fact that there's AI out there that could reproduce my voice and whatever I need to say? It reminds me of the old Sneakers movie where my voice is my passport, verify me, right? I think it's the whole scenario of like trying to reproduce by reproducing using AI, whether it's deep fakes or deep fake audio or deep fake video. Are companies worried about this? Are they worried that these things won't last if there's not other ways to authenticate somebody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, I would say that companies are concerned about this, but they tend to be also concerned about how passwords, letters, and numbers, as a username and a password actually are also more let's say more weak. So are weaker than biometrics. So that's the first point. Okay, to have a clear discussion here. And then, of course, they have, they tend to take into account how biometric engines are developed. That's the first point, I would say. So first of all, they have to be, or they want to have a conversation with the developer and the manufacturer that is actually training, the engines in this case, and doing it in a safe way, for example. This is key. So first of all, we need to be sure, or companies need to be sure that their systems, the biometric systems, are well trained. Okay, and there are not a threat independent testing. So they undergo through independent testing, like for example the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is dependent of the U.S. Department of Commerce. They undergo some tests, cybersecurity tests. They have some certificates like the ISO 27000 or maybe the SOC2. And of course, they are also concerned, and this is a discussion we always have with the industry about the bias. Okay, so of course, when you have passwords and you have letters and numbers, that's it. You have letters and numbers. If you have AI trained biometric engines, if you don't train well, you could have racial bias or gender bias behind. Okay, so of course you have to be sure that your biometric engines, the ones that you are employing for the logical access as well as the physical access, have not racial bias and are very well trained. And of course there are some ethics behind. Okay, so there is, for example, a framework that was created by Google, Microsoft, and IBM, and other companies that establish AI ethic principles. Okay, and actually. For example, we are the only company in the world to have AI ethics analysis of our system tested for and to comply with this framework, meaning that we care about data privacy, no data storage, safety and security, responsibility and accountability, principle of fairness, transparency, and so on. And then they are very concerned. That's the first thing. And then the second one would be, am I subjected to AI attacks? So deepfakes and anti-spoofing techniques. And spoofing, actually. So you have to be sure as well that your systems are robust and resilient against these spoofing attacks. Okay, and as you were mentioned before, when you have AI protecting your systems, you can have AI attacking your systems. But if you have AI attacking your systems, you can have also some learning about those attacks. So, for example, we are present in more than 25 countries, and we see a lot of fraud and a lot of attacks coming from, for example, Latin American countries or maybe Europe. And these attacks are different, very different. Okay, so we see attacks in Italy that are completely different than those attacks that are being trying to enter into a company in the UK or in Mexico, and we can learn from all those attacks to prevent them to enter into the systems that or the companies we're trying to protect in this case.
And the other thing, if I may, that I would add there, Lou, is that it's important to have an engineering team that is capable, that is able to be nimble and adjust to attacks on the fly. So that's a critical piece of it. Having proprietary systems, right? A lot of solution providers out there have multiple partners that they've worked with, but that does make it more difficult to respond in a timely manner when new threats come up. And so that's a couple of things also that come into play as you look at how do you adjust on an ongoing basis to this new sort of world that we live in.
Well, we've been talking about a number of things, and I want to get back to this idea of working with other things a little bit, because we know that, ironically, complexity is the enemy of security. And as we get into these more complex systems, if someone is implementing Veridas, how complex is it to add it? Let's say someone is using a standard single-factor authentication. They're on username and password, and now they want to add Veridas. Does this mean that they've got multiple services they've got to attach to? Do they have multiple cloud instances they're going to have to attach to? How complicated is it to make this happen? It's in a very basic way, it's very efficient and very quick. It's not that complicated. The key is we are a technology provider, so often the model is that we will be a partner with an identity platform, for example. And so we'll attach into that identity platform, and that will then be what the consumer is using for this tech, and it's very streamlined, very efficient to add in to a new customer that instance, if you will. It is all cloud based. We're AWS cloud based offering, but so it makes us nimble and be able to respond very quickly when there's a need. We can deploy it in as quick as two weeks. So it turnaround time. There's very little sort of coding that has to take place. Very little customization. It can happen very quickly. And again, I want to come in, because do you tend to deploy your solution in a way so that it is the factor, or is this an additional factor on top of that username password? So this becomes part of a multi-factor authentication thing. And if it is that second, how long does someone have to hold their face still in front of a camera? How much friction does this add to the entire process of being authenticated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, to answer your first question, I would say the answer is yes. Some do it in single factor, some do it in multi-factor. So it just depends, right? Obviously, I mean, no matter what it is, if you're going to, in security, we talk about layers, right? And so you add another layer, it's going to be more robust. How much friction does it add? It's very minimal, actually. Typically, the authentication the ongoing authentication often will happen on a mobile device. That's the mobile device has the best cameras, and so it's able to provide the best experience, if you will. But it's a matter of a second or two. I mean, it's very short. It's very quick. But again, it can happen with a computer camera. Certainly on the onboarding process and what we call IDV. That is we strongly recommend that be done on a mobile device because of the camera quality. But on an authentication basis, on an ongoing basis, that's less critical.
Okay. Now, one of the things, we've been hearing for years that the holy grail of authentication is passwordless. Let's get rid of these things that people can't remember and that are such a pain in the rear to come up with and remember and store and manage and all that stuff.
Right.
So are you seeing any deployments where people are using, I know that there are some companies doing things like behavioral analytics, and so they're using behavior as a factor. Are we getting close to a place where someone can do multi-factor authentication while still never requiring someone to type in a password?
Oh, I would say that's absolutely true. Yes, we are. We're there today. That could be done today, multi-factor without a password. And frankly, we think that's the place we should be in. I mean, across the board, it's more, like I outlined at the beginning. We feel like it's more secure. It's a better experience. And saves money. I mean, everybody's happy there.
Now, I do want to ask a back on the privacy question, because that's something that everybody. I was flying a couple of times in the last couple of weeks in one of the airports where I was, Orlando. They're using some facial recognition at TSA. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people have very real privacy concerns. And I know you have said that because of the way your system works, that you cannot steal an image and have that used to authenticate without the human face in front of it.
Right.
But is there enough identification or enough data stored so that someone could be identified from the data storage so that a face could be matched with an identity? Where I'm going with this ultimately is, how Big Brother-esque should people be worried about the facial recognition data that a system like yours stores in case someone could get into it and use it to keep track of them as they go about their normal, entirely law-abiding lives?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Alfonso, I'm going to let you field that one.
Of course. So first of all, how this usually works is that we don't store any data. So it's going to be the client, in this case, the company that is using this service, the one that is storing only this biometric template when it's used. Okay, and this biometric template, which is, as Larry said before, subset of numbers and letters, is going to be particular for that system. And actually, we always say that this system should be private, secure, and voluntary. Okay, so we cannot force, and people mustn't be forced to use these systems. Okay, but there are a lot of legislation out there to be able, to be protected or to protect citizens, in this case, or customers. Okay, like GDPR in Europe, which is one of the most restrictive legislations regarding privacy, but also CCPA, so California Privacy Act, and BIPA, the Illinois Privacy Act. And so if the systems are well developed and are robust, you can comply with those, which means that if you have all the framework implemented to deploy biometric systems, then you can be sure that you are not under these Big Brother systems. Okay. In fact, for example, we have hardware. We manufacture hardware also for facial authentication in the physical access. Okay, because we are beginning to see that there is a merge between the physical or the logical, physical and logical worlds, or physical digital worlds. And with one enrollment, you can be entering your building and also your computer with your face. Okay, and those systems can store only the biometric vector during a certain period of time. Okay, and they can turn on only if you are very close to those systems. So camera will turn on only to take your face and don't be to avoid open field biometric computation or video surveillance systems. So we are not in that sphere. So it's everything about voluntary, secure, and private.
I like the voluntary, secure, and private words that you're using there. I think those are all good. So as we get closer to having to wrap up, I do want to ask one about your customers. And that is, I know that you said that you are frequently partnered with another authentication and identity provider. Would you say that most of your customers are Global 500 companies? Do they tend to be as small as, say, small engineering consultancies, or are they somewhere between? What kind of customer would you think is typical for solutions that incorporate the Veridas solution?
It's a tough question to answer because there's a really broad, we play in a broad vertical space, right? A lot of different verticals, as well as a lot of different sizes. What I will say in general is volume matters, right? So for the very small companies that are only going to have a few hundred, verification authentications, on a monthly basis, that's probably this is probably a space where we're not going to be playing in. So in the financial industry, for example, financial institutions, where I have a lot of experience, we're typically going to be in the larger, the top maybe 200 financial institutions in the country, 200-300 kind of size is where we're going to be playing, as opposed to, your small community credit union that has 3 branches, right? And again, it's just that question just is really around scale. Let's see, there was another aspect to your question and now I'm forgetting it.
Well, just trying to, you've begun to answer it when you talk about the scale, because it sounds like the issue is more how many authentications per month rather than a specific either number of employees or annual turnover in terms of dollar amounts.
If I may,
that's correct.
Yeah. Maybe you can answer. So it will depend a lot on the use case as well. So what we see is that we have the industry, and then we have subset of technologies. We have voice authentication and facial authentication, which by the way they both can play as multifactor authentication as well. And we are seeing a lot of companies playing with those 2 factors to be extremely sure that you are authenticating properly your customers. But our technologies are easily scalable. So as we told you before, we are in different industries like insurance companies, like BFSI, so banking, financial services, fintechs, retail as well, telcos. So there is a lot of industries in which we are deploying our technologies. And then, of course, mid-size and large-size companies are the ones that are eager to adopt these technologies, but also smaller companies can also begin adopting 1 or 2 of these technologies. And also we have the physical side, and you mentioned before during your program CIP, so the critical infrastructure, and healthcare as well. So we are beginning to implement also physical access through facial authentication in those sectors. So you can begin even with 2, as you said in the Orlando airport, with 1 or 2 terminals, and then scale it up to 1,000, 2,000.
Now, before we close up, I do want to channel a little bit of our other co-host and producer, Brian Chi. He loves to ask the famous looking glass or fortune-telling question around the fact that, obviously there's a rapidly changing landscape, whether it's digital identity or biometrics. Where do you see Veridas in the next 5 years?
We argue who's going to answer. I'll start, and then Alfonso can finish. How about that? We do see a significant move toward passwordless. Right? We talked about that multi-factor with face and voice, with maybe some other behavioral things were discussed. But we do see a significant move in that direction in the identity space. All the studies show that the growth in this space is going to be significant in the next 5 years, and we don't see any signs, indicators that are going to say otherwise. So yeah, there's going to be a significant move toward this technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we recently shared Google, making this announcement and a warning about the dangers of passwords and recognizing the benefits of using biometrics. So we see that these are, you always begin with those sectors that are really compromised about passwords, like airports, for example. But then we will see that a lot of companies will implement biometrics, not only those that are in the security, world, but also those that want to drastically improve the user experience. Okay, so we see a world in which biometrics will verify and authenticate users within seconds. Not leaving the user frustrated as we are right now, okay? Which will be the case even if a password was involved. So that's where we are right now, and we will see that the deployment of facial authentication, voice authentication, and also the digital and physical merge. So where only one enrollment will be valid for accessing your offices, your headquarters, and then also your computer, okay, or your intranet, your user area, and that's where we see the world going.
Sounds interesting. Well, with any great show, time flies. Of course, Alfonso, Larry, thank you so much for being here. Of course, we're running low on time, but I wanted to give you a chance to tell the audience at home where they can learn more about Veridas. Maybe how they get started, how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so just our website is probably the best place, veridas.com. There's a link on there. You can ask for sales and just request a contact, and we'll be in touch with you shortly. You can look us up on LinkedIn as well. We're easy to find on LinkedIn. So happy to connect with anybody out there that would like to have some more discussion.
Thank you, guys. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise and IT podcast in the universe. And I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my wonderful co-host. I want to thank Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you?
Well, next week they can find me in Las Vegas. I'm going to be at a vendor conference. Then back home for a while, and then in August I'm back out in Las Vegas at Black Hat and DEF CON. In the meantime, I'm writing. I've got a new piece up today on dark reading at the dark reading /Omdia tab. I will be doing stuff on the various social media fronts, trying to help people find me there. To be brutally honest, one of the places I'm being more active these days is LinkedIn. So people are welcome to go over and find me on LinkedIn, Curtis Franklin on LinkedIn. But I'm staying busy. Lots going on. This is paradoxically a busy season for us here in the U.S. security industry. While our colleagues over in Europe are taking August off, we're decamping to the desert and trying not to have a heat stroke while we learn about all the latest vulnerabilities, threats, and hacks. So a good time. Follow me. I love to hear from the TWiT Riot in various message forums. Let me know what you're thinking about and what you want to know about. Happy to engage at any time.
Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well. You are the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show and to get your enterprise goodness. And we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen and catch up on your enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all of our amazing back episodes and all the notes of the show, guest information, of course. But of course, next to those videos, you'll get those helpful subscribe and download links. Get the support the show by getting your audio version or video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your podcast applications or devices because we're on all of them. The best way to listen is definitely subscribe and be part of that movement. Definitely do that. But of course, you also may have heard we have Club TWiT as well. That's right. I alluded to this in the beginning of the show. Club TWiT is an ad-free, members-only podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you can't get anywhere else. It's only $7 a month. And a lot of great things you can get. Obviously, the ad-free part of it's great, but one of them is also the exclusive access to the members-only Discord server. You can chat with hosts, you got chat with producers, separate discussions, channels. Plus, there's lots of special events, lots of fun ones, really good, interesting stuff that you can't hear anywhere else. So definitely join Club TWiT. Be part of that movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, they also offer corporate group plans as well. It's a great way to give your entire team access to our ad-free tech podcast. And of course, the plans start with 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month. And you can add as many seats as you like there, of course. And this is really a great way for your IT departments, your sales departments, your tech teams to stay up to date with all of our podcasts. And of course, just like regular memberships, you can join the Discord server or even that TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. And of course, there's one other way as well. You can also do family plans. That's why it's a $12 a month plan and you get 2 seats with that. And then of course, there's $6 each for each additional seat after that. And they get all the advantages of the single plan as well. So lots of options there. Definitely join Club TWiT at twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your family members, your friends, your coworkers with the gift of TWiT because, we have a lot of fun on this show. We have a lot of great information and tech topics, and I guarantee they will find it fun and interesting as well. So definitely share it with them and have them subscribe. Now, if you've already subscribed, we're doing the show live right now. That's right. We have a live stream. You can just go to your website of live.twit.tv. There you'll see all the streams you can choose from. You can see behind the scenes, how the pizza's made, all the banter and before and after the show, how we basically produce this thing live. You can come see all my mistakes. Check that out. Laugh at me. Of course, if you want to be part of the live show as well, you might as well be part of our live chat room as well. We have an IRC channel that you can get to just as a web browser as well. Go to irc.twit.tv. There will pop you into the TWiT live channel. We have some amazing characters in there each and every week. Ripple Rider, Reaver, Mike. We have Co-ops. We have Keith. We have everyone's in there this week. Wizardling. So check that out. Be part of that. And of course, get some amazing topics and show conversations in there. irc.twit.tv. I want you to also contact me because I love to hear feedback about the show. I love to hear just the topics you want to hear about when we banter. Of course, I also talk to a lot of people who are starting out in the industry, where they should go. Even people who've been in the industry for a while around implementations and solutions. So definitely hit me up, whether it's at Twitter, twitter.com/LewMM. I have a lot of messages on there. In fact, I'm actually surprised. I get more messages on Twitter and the direct messages than I do on email. People tend to use the direct message more than email nowadays. So definitely hit me up on there. Of course, LewMM at twit.social for Mastodon. Of course, you can direct message me as well there. And of course, LinkedIn as well. Hit me up anywhere you can because I love hearing feedback. I love talking to people. If you want to know what I do during my normal work week at Microsoft, definitely check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There it is. Latest greatest ways for you to customize Office, make it more productive for you. And of course, if you have Microsoft 365, just pop open Excel right now and check out the Automate tab. It's fun, actually. You can record macros, do all the things you want to do in Excel, records it, generates code for you, and then you can replay them back, whether it's in Power Automate, behind the scenes. You can integrate a whole bunch of different services, or you can just run them right in the client. There's a lot of fun. So definitely check that out and see if that can make your life more productive and more automated. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Lisa and Leo. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you for their support over the years. Of course, I'll thank you to all the engineers and staff at TWiT. They're always involved and always really helpful. And of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chi. He's not only our co-host normally, but he's also our tireless producer, and he does all the bookings and the plannings for the show. And again, we really couldn't do the show without him. So thank you, Chi. I know how hard your job is. I've tried to do it, and failed. So thank you, Chamber, for being there and being there for us. Of course, before we sign out, I also have to thank our TD for today, Mr. Victor. Victor, thank you so much for all your support. Anything special coming up today?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Later, Club TWiT members come on to Discord later on for a hangout, and somebody told me there's going to be ribs. So,
ooh.
But I don't know about eating ribs on camera though. So it'll be Ant and some of our other staff who are here in the office, just hanging out. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, join us later.
Looking forward to it. Love it. Thank you. Well, thank you again, Mr. Victor. And of course, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that TWiT now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club TWiT Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club TWiT exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club TWiT member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.